The jump ball in high school basketball. It doesn't happen frequently. We want to be ready when it does. We have to be prepared mentally. We're ready to officiate the game. Sometimes we watch our game video and we see, maybe I wasn't quite ready. But if we understand the rules and restrictions, we're in a better position to be successful. If we understand the rules and restrictions, we're in a better position to be. If we understand the rules and restrictions, we're in better position to get plays right. Let's look at some play scenarios for jump ball scenarios. Greetings and welcome back to another edition of the Basketball Rules Expert, the show where we take National Federation of High School Basketball rules, we lift them off the printed page, we breathe life into them, simplify, clarify, amplify so that we can take them with us onto the basketball court. Greetings again, everybody. My name is Greg Austin with abetterofficial.com. I've been a high school basketball official here in the San Francisco Bay Area for over a decade. Consider myself to be a basketball rules expert, and this show is about helping you on a journey to becoming a basketball rules expert as well. Before we get started, have to give a shout out to fantastic show supporters. Jason Hayes, Jordan Trupner, Curtis Clanton, Keith German, and Patrick Hunt. Much appreciated and much love. You want to support the show? You can always head to abetterofficial.com/coffee, buy us a coffee, and there is always a link in the show notes and a link above to do that. All right, this is Jump Ball Week here at A Better Official. We are looking at one of the three restarts in the game. The jump ball happens the least often of all of the restarts. Of course, we know that throw-ins happen dozens of times a game. Free throws, often in a game, hopefully not too many. But the jump ball happens once, maybe twice, in an extreme situation, more than twice. But it catches us. With all of the restarts, we've identified things that can cause us to go wrong. Throw-ins happen so frequently that many different things can happen, and they can surprise us. Free throws, that's a chance for officials to sort of check out for a moment, take a little me time, and contemplate what's going on in the game. They're vulnerable to making mistakes. And of course, with jump balls, we have to say, are we really ready to officiate the game when the ball goes up? We would obviously tell ourselves we're ready, but are we really ready to adjudicate plays from the jump? Whoa, is that where that expression came from?
Holy mackerel!
So we're going to look at jump ball scenarios today on Basketball Rules Expert. Let's get started with our very first play scenario. The official releases the ball for a jump ball, and much taller A1 easily wins the jump. Jumper B1, rather than jumping, as the official is releasing the ball, smartly sprints 10 feet to where A1 will tap the ball and bats the ball to the floor and begins a dribble. The officials rule this a legal play since the jump ball ended when B1's batted ball contacted the floor. I screwed that up. Right. Still making mistakes. All right, let me go there. Were the officials correct? Yes or no? All right, so we have a jump ball scenario. Tall jumper, small jumper. Small jumper says, I'm not going to jump for the ball. I'm just going to read where the taller jumper is going to bat the ball on the tip, right? So the referee releases the toss. The player reads where the taller jumper is looking, runs to that spot. The taller jumper hits the ball, bats it towards our jumper, B2, who rather than catch the ball, deflects the ball to the floor and begins a dribble. The officials say, well, the jump ball ended when the ball was hit the floor, so B1 is now allowed to pick up that ball and dribble or just continue dribbling the ball. That's all legal, right? So the officials rule it a legal play. Were the officials correct? Yes or no? Right? We need to know the restrictions on each of our groups of players on the court during a jump ball. What do we have? We have jumpers, right? There's two jumpers. They have a designated area that they must be in. We have players who are on the circle, and then we have the other players. So we have three sets, and each set has a different set of restrictions. Jumpers are required until the ball is tapped to stay within the semicircle. They don't have to attempt to jump. They're not required to do that as long as one player attempts to jump. They are not required to face the jump ball area, but they are required to remain in the semicircle until the ball is tapped. So this player, in anticipation of the ball being tipped, ran out of the circle, made the right decision, was in position to steal the basketball, basically to steal the tip, but their action of leaving the semicircle is a violation by rule. So in this instance, where the officials ruled this to be a legal play, were the officials correct? No. No, they were not. So our officiating crew off to a rough start on our first play. Let's look at our very next play scenario. As the referee is preparing to enter the circle for a jump ball, they notice that B2 is standing in front of A2 near the free throw line. The referee instructs the two players to stand side by side. Were the officials correct? Yes or no? Right? We see this all the time. Referees ready to enter the circle, notices something about some players positioned on the court and instructs them to either move or reposition. Something about the way they are positioned is illegal. We see it all the time. Usually when we see it, almost always when we see it, it's inaccurate. It's something that's been passed down, sort of a concept that, things are attributes of a jump ball are in place. Players have to hold their position. Players cannot be side by side, or cannot be one in front of the other anywhere on the court, etc. But again, if we know our three subsets, our three groups, we have jumpers, we have players on the circle, and we have players off of the circle. And each of those subsets has restrictions about their location, their movement, etc. Just like in a free throw scenario, when we have players in marked lane spaces, we have the free thrower, and we have players beyond the arc. We have those three groups. They have rules and restrictions regarding their movement, but if we have a situation where a player, in a free throw scenario beyond the arc moved right while the throw was in flight, that's not a violation, right? Whereas that same action by a player in a marked lane space could be. So in this situation, we're talking to players who are not on the circle. Players who are not on the circle have no restrictions on their movement or their positioning. They could stand in the far corner of the court. They could stand on the division line, close to the sideline. They could be in a kneeling position. They could be doing cartwheels in the backcourt. There's no restriction on that. There's no restriction. Who has a restriction about being side by side? Players on the circle. On the circle. Remember, we're taking our 3 foot by 3 foot spot, our 3 foot by 3 foot area, similar to a free throw. we're taking that and we're bringing that to the center circle. And we're saying, okay, this player who's standing on the circle has that 3-foot spot, and another player standing next to them has a 3-foot spot, etc. Those players are not allowed to be one in front of the other. Players on the circle. Players who are not on the circle have no such restrictions, right? When we see our partner and they say, hey, you two, got to be side by side, and they're like 20 feet away, those restrictions just do not apply. So in this instance, where the official instructed the players who were not on the circle that they had to be side by side, were the officials correct? No. No, they were not. Oh man, we see that all the time. I mean, that is a super common scenario. And like we say, a lot of the actions by referees when they start the game are habitual actions. And we want to have habitual actions as we prepare for the game. We want to, just like the mental performance gurus will say, having a pre-shot routine for a shooter shooting a free throw helps them become better. We want to have pregame activities, right? The way that we're going to, communicate with our partners. Hey, you ready? Players, what we say to the players, etc. We have these habitual actions, and that's a good thing because it helps us get ready to officiate and get ready to go. But sometimes we have to examine and say, well, wait a minute, I've built up these habitual actions and there's something in there that's amiss, right? And we can fix that at any time. And that's what this show is all about, is helping understand rules and restrictions so that we can all get better together. All right, our crew is off to a slow start, 0 for 2 on our first 2 play scenarios. Let's take a look at our very next play scenario. Hey, can I ask you a quick favor? If you're finding this video content valuable, take just a second. Hit the like button below. Really helps with the YouTube algorithm and helps to get the video in front of more basketball officials so that we can all get better together. Thank you. As the referee is on the upward motion to release the toss, A2 near the sideline in a designed play sprints towards their goal in anticipation of receiving a pass after the tip. The officials rule a jump ball violation for the player moving prior to the release of the toss. Were the officials correct? Let me go back. Were the officials correct? Yes or no? Some teams take jump balls very seriously. They want to get an advantage in the game from the jump. They may have a jumper who is a dominant jumper, either quick off the floor, a great leaper, or just tall. And they have a design play, right? We see it all the time, or we see it somewhat frequently, where they're going to tap the ball to one player, and that player is immediately going to pass the ball ahead to a player cutting to the basket. They have the design play. There's a YouTube clip available that shows the coach. He's instructing the players when the official dips. I want those players on the wing to break for the basket, right? So, again, what are the restrictions on our 3 groups? Jumpers, players on the circle, players not on the circle. These players were not on the circle. There is no restriction on their movement at any point. They could be running wind sprints up and down the court when the official says is about to administer the jump ball. They could be just running around or running around the outside of the court. There's just no restriction on their activity. So, the official enters the circle, that player can start sprinting right then. The official starts their upward motion, that player can start sprinting right then. They can release the toss, that player can start sprinting right then. There's no restriction on the movement of players who are not jumpers or on the circle, other than those players are not allowed to move onto the circle. But that's not addressed here. So in this situation where the officials ruled a jump ball violation for the player running down the court, were the officials correct? No, they were not. All right, our crew is off to a rough start, 0-3. We've got to get the next one right. Let's look at the very next play scenario. As the referee is on the upward motion to release the toss, A2, who has a position on the circle, quickly slips around B2 where they think the ball will go. The officials rule a jump ball violation for A2 changing positions on the circle prior to the release of the toss. Were the officials correct? Yes or no? Come on, ref. We're 0-3. We got to get this one right. Right? So remember our three subsets. We got players, the jumpers. We have players on the circle. We have players off the circle. Players on the circle have certain restrictions. They are not allowed to move along the circle, around the circle, change position on the circle after the official is ready and until the ball is tossed. Once the ball is tossed, they can move around the circle, but until the ball is tossed, they may not. They must, those players on the circle must hold their spots. Our restriction comes into play there. This player, when the official was about to release, said, I know where this tip is going to go. And they adjusted their position. They went around the player next to them to another spot, and they, maybe anticipated right and got the ball, right? But that movement is illegal by rule. So in this instance, where the officials ruled a jump ball violation, were the officials correct? Yes. Yes, they were. All right, our crew is in the game. Let's look at our very next play scenario. During the jump ball to start overtime, jumper A1 bats the tip, which caroms off the tossing official's head high into the air. A1 then jumps and catches the ball before it touches the floor. The officials rule this a legal play. Were the officials correct? Yes or no? Now we know the restriction that jumpers can't catch the ball. And this jumper caught the ball, right? But something has happened in between, and we need to know, of course, with all restarts, is when the restart starts and when the restart ends, because the rules and restrictions for our restarts, free throws, throw-ins, and jump ball, those rules restrictions only apply during the event. So when it starts and when it ends is critical. So this ball was tapped by the jumper, was tipped by the jumper, bounced off the official's head high into the air, and they caught the ball. Had the jump ball ended by rule? When does a jump ball end by rule? When it touches one of the non-jumpers. Did it do that? No. When it touches the basket or the backboard. Did it do that? No. When it touches the floor. Did it do that? No, but in a fashion it did. Or when it touches an official. When it touched the official, the jump ball had ended, the restrictions have ended, the player is legally allowed to then catch the basketball. So in this instance where the officials ruled this to be a legal play, were the officials correct? Yes. Yes, they were. Our crew is on the rise. Let's look at our very next play scenario. On the jump ball to start overtime, A1 and B1 bat the ball at the same time, causing it to go out of bounds. The officials have the same two players re-jump to begin overtime. Were the officials correct? Yes or no? Interesting play scenario. So we have a jump ball to start overtime. Both players attempt to tap the ball, to bat the ball, to win the toss. Both players attempt to win the toss. The ball is contacted by both players and goes out of bounds on the sideline. The officials rule that we will re-jump, and that is correct by rule. And the officials rule that the two jumpers will re-jump, and that is correct by rule. I'm almost certain. The officials rule that the ball will be re-jumped and our jumpers will attempt again. Were the officials correct? Yes. Yes, they were. All right, our crew. Our crew's improving. We love to see it. Let's take a look at our very next play scenario. On jump ball to start overtime, B2 is positioned on the center circle. After the ball is tossed, but before it is touched, B2 runs through the circle to a spot she anticipates the ball to be batted to. The officials rule a jump ball violation for breaking the plane of the circle prior to the ball being touched on the jump. Were the officials correct? Were the officials correct? Yes or no? I like the specific answer they gave, that the violation was for violating the plane of the circle. So one of the restrictions on players on the circle is that until the ball is touched, they are not allowed to break the plane of the circle. So we've got three phases. The official is ready to officiate, and they blow the whistle, enter the circle, and are about to toss. Players on the circle may not change position. They may not move by rule. The ball is released by the official. Now those players can move to their heart's content, with one exception. Those players may not break the plane and enter the circle until the ball is touched by one of the jumpers. So in this instance where the officials ruled a jump ball violation for a player on the circle violating the plane before the ball was touched by a jumper, were the officials correct? Yes. Yes, they were. All right, let's look now at our very next play scenario. On the jump ball to start overtime, jumper B1 steals the tip by contacting the tossed ball before it reaches its highest point. The officials rule a jump ball violation on B1 and award the ball for a sideline throw-in to Team A. When the throw-in starts, the arrow is set to Team B. Were the officials correct? Yes or no? Probably the most commonly called jump ball violation. Jumper contacting the ball before it reaches its apex, essentially stealing the tip. We see it. It's not uncommon. We see it, and oftentimes there's no violation ruled where a player obviously contacts the ball. Let's remember our scenario was overtime. Our jump ball to start overtime. If we have a situation to start the game, right, we may have more flexibility on this rule in terms of how we officiate the game and how we adjudicate. But in this instance, where a team is gaining an advantage in a tie ball game late in the game, we would obviously want to be accurate in our ruling, shall we say. So in this instance, where the officials ruled a jump ball violation, were those officials correct? Absolutely. Yes, they were. And the possession arrow would be set, since one team violated, their opponent gets the ball at the spot nearest the violation. In this instance, it would be a division line throw-in. And the arrow is set when the ball is at the disposal of the thrower. So the next held ball situation where we would use the arrow would go to the team that actually violated in this instance. Okay, let's look at our very next play scenario. During the jump ball to start the game, jumper A1 tips the ball to himself, catches the ball, and begins a dribble. The officials rule this to be a violation. Were the officials correct? Yes or no? Probably one of the other most frequently called violations in a jump ball scenario. A jumper, there's restrictions on what they can do. They cannot contact the ball more than twice. So if they contact the ball a third time in an attempt to control the ball, or if they catch the ball, if they do either of those things before the jump ball ends, and we know the jump ball ends when it touches the floor, another player, the official, basket or backboard. That's when the jump ball ends. Player cannot catch the ball until it ends. This player has violated a simple violation. Of course, our crew got it right. Were the officials correct? Yes. Yes, they were. Hey, let's take a look at our very next play scenario. On the opening tip, the referee's toss is badly offline, favoring jumper A1. A1 tips the ball to teammate A2. The umpire sounds their whistle and orders a rejump with the clock reset to 8 minutes. Were the officials correct? Yes or no? The official is instructed to release the throw-in toss. The official is instructed to release the toss for a jump ball straight up and down in the middle of the court, allowing both players a favorable opportunity. At times, as human beings, the toss is poor. We see it at all levels. I was watching an NBA game last season, and it was like an amazing display of a bad toss. Why do we have a bad toss? Because we're human beings. It happens. In this instance, one of the other officials on the play, umpire in a two-person game, or U1 or U2, can obviously put a whistle on the play, say we are going to rejump that because the official's toss was poor. In that instance, we would expect the clock has the clock has started, and we would need to adjust the clock since we are redoing. The officials did that in this instance. Were the officials correct? Yes. Yes, they were. Good game management on this play, right? Simple and straightforward. Stop play, get it right, have a fair toss, and go. If it's slightly off, and it was fair, both players had an equal opportunity, or one of the players didn't jump and the other jumped, we're going to use judgment about the play, whether we need to stop and restart. But if one player was obviously disadvantaged, then the officials did the correct thing on this play. All right, let's take a look at our very next play scenario. On the jump ball to start overtime, B2 and B3 are in adjacent positions on the center circle. A2 attempts to take a spot between them, but they won't move. A2 appeals to the referee for help. The referee instructs A2 that they are in a legal position and A2 must find another spot on the circle. Was the referee correct? Yes or no? Right? We have a situation where players are on the circle. B2 and B3 are adjacent to each other, right? We see this in NBA where there's players on the circle. They try to create a space, and then the player who's attempting to control the jump ball is going to basically tap the ball in the direction of that space, so that team has the optimum opportunity to collect and win possession of the ball. But the rules state that if two players are adjacent, two players on the same team are adjacent on the circle, and their opponent wants the space between them, they are allowed to do that by rule. So in this instance, the referee should have said to the two players, you need to allow that player in to that space. So in this instance where the official did not do that and told A2 that they were basically out of luck, and had to find another spot. Was the official correct? No. No, they were not. All right, let's look at another play scenario. On the jump ball to start overtime, after the official releases the toss, B3 slips from a position off of the circle to the right next to A3 on the circle. B3 shields A3 with their body and catches the tipped ball. The officials rule this to be a legal play. Were the officials correct? Yes or no? So we have a situation where we have a player who is not on the circle. Once the ball is released on the toss, moves onto the circle, stands next to their opponent in a position, they're basically boxing them out, and the ball is tipped, and they control the basketball, right? What are the restrictions on those players? We have three groups: jumper, players on a circle, players not on a circle. This player was not on a circle. The one restriction that they have is they're not allowed to move onto the circle until the ball is tipped on the jump. So when the ball was released by the official, they made a quick move onto the circle, gained position, gained control of the basketball. This would be a violation by rule. Our crew ruled this to be a legal play. Were the officials correct? No. This is a violation by rule. Our officials were not correct. All right, our play scenarios today have really clarified the rules and restrictions in jump ball scenarios. They don't happen often, but we want to get plays right. Thanks for joining us today. We have additional video content for you here. Make your choice. Choose wisely. We have the master class here, and we have the 5-play episode also about jump balls. See you in the next video. Take care.